Thanks, Linda. Welcome, everyone. My name is Nicholas Chu. I'm the Operations Director at the HRIA, and on behalf of the HRIA, welcome to our final webinar for the HIRE20 Virtual Conference entitled The Sales Roadmap Back. Some might say we've saved the best webinar to last, and certainly that's what Ingrid Maynard told me when we were just catching up earlier. So anyway, we have a fantastic webinar ahead of us. Quite obviously, HIRE20 could not happen physically due to the COVID virus. As a result, we've put in place this virtual conference, and it's been a fantastic conference. And we really are thankful for our members for joining into this conference. Whilst we couldn't deliver this physically, we were fortunate to have a lot of our normal sponsors backing us up for HIRE20. We'd like to take this time to acknowledge the support of these sponsors. And really, we're looking forward to working with these sponsors, looking forward to HIRE21, which has been announced for the Gold Coast. A familiar location for a lot of our members, and all things going well, we're really looking forward to being back there and meeting up with you face to face and reconnecting in some of those relationships. A little bit of housekeeping before we sort of move forward. What you'll find is that we have the chat function enabled for this with this webinar. If you are having any issues in terms of audio or video, please type some notes in, put it up on the chat forum, and the wonderful Linda and Sally will take a look at that and make sure they can fix up anything that might be going wrong. We also have a Q&A functionality enabled. So if you have any questions during the course of the seminar, please type them in and we'll endeavour to get to all of them at the conclusion of the main presentation. If we don't get to them, rest assured, we will get back to those people that have asked those questions. And also, if there's a question which might be a little bit sensitive for you to ask in a public forum, even though the questions are anonymous, please still reach out to us and we'll make sure we can put you connect you up with Ingrid and get you some information around that. We have a number of live polls that will be running during the seminar. Please participate in that. It really gives us some insights on the fly around what you're thinking and the directions that we're taking. And finally, this is a recorded webinar. So this will be available to you to refer to after the fact. It should take us a day or so to get it loaded up, but that asset will be available to you and it'll be available to your colleagues at your places of work. One of the benefits of being a member of the HRIA. Listen, when the COVID virus broke, it was definitely a defining moment in the National Office, but really from the Board of Directors through the National Office to the state committees and all of our focus groups, the number one priority became supporting our members through this storm and also giving them the tools, the knowledge, the insight to be able to position themselves best to grow out of this crisis as well. And that's why this webinar is so relevant to all of us today. And we're really, really fortunate to have Ingrid on the line to present this. A little bit of background information for you. Ingrid has over 20 years working with both Australian and international companies in the sales arena. She's the Managing Director of the Sales Doctor for the last 7+ years. And she's been consulting at a high level with sales teams, as I mentioned, both nationally and internationally. Key thing for this presentation is that Ingrid is really going to be focusing on some key takeaways and practical skills that you can be taking from this webinar and applying into your business. So without further ado, thank you very much for joining us, Ingrid, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Nicholas. What a great introduction. I'd just really like to thank HRIA for inviting me to this conference. Fantastic to be able to be here, and also a thank you to Aileen Hiskins from SA Training. It's because of her that I'm able to facilitate here. And I'd also really like to thank Sally and James Oxenham as well for having me. So today's session I have called the Sales Roadmap Back, and that's a deliberate title because sales is indeed a critical success factor for every organisation and business. So sadly, it's one of those areas though that we invest in the least, which staggers or beggars belief, in my opinion. Of course, I'd say that, but it is crazy when everything else depends on selling, and yet that's the area that we tend to neglect. Instead, we choose to believe that the right salesperson is going to come along and solve everything and be the answer to all of our prayers. Now, the bad news is the right salesperson actually doesn't exist. They don't come ready-made so that you can just plug them in or wind them up and let them go for them to do all of the heavy lifting for us. But the good news is that with the right support, good salespeople who have aligned values, who have a good industry reputation, not just from their past employer, but, you know, what do their customers say about them? What do some of their suppliers say about them? What are other stakeholders kind of holding them? What kind of regard are they held in, I should say? The people who are coachable, and, you know, when it comes to selling, you know, how to do that at a high level and become outstanding, you know, so those sorts of people we want to recruit, because they're the ones that we can actually take somewhere and develop along with our organisation. So, you know, I'm here to speak to business owners, sales leaders and salespeople to show you why we need to do something different. And when it comes to selling, how to do that at a high level and to illustrate what we need to be doing. So I've got the first poll question for you. Now, I talk about being coachable. And what I mean by that is someone who's committed to their ongoing growth as sales professionals. So in other words, I don't mean someone who thinks they already have all the answers. So when you look at either yourself or your sales team, I want you to rate the level of coachability with 100% being totally coachable. This will be quite interesting, because I think that this is the number one recruitment factor that I would suggest anyone looks for when they're looking for a new salesperson or a sales leader. So let's see how we went there. Okay, so we've got somewhere in the middle ground there. We've got some people saying that their sales team is, you know, in that 75 to 100% coachable. That's great. For the majority of people, they're sitting at about 55% of us here in the room, you know, kind of midway coachable. So look, that's better than down at the bottom there. But I think that that's a really important factor to start to consider. So the reality is we're going to be living with COVID for a while yet. So people are talking about, oh, you know, once we all come back out of lockdown, once this thing's over with. Well, I don't think it's going to be over with anytime soon. So we're going to be living with the distancing and the safety restrictions that come with it for a while. Now, when we think about, you know, construction sites, you know, while still in operation, are far from, you know, business as usual, distancing still applies. And because, you know, closing down a site can be devastating. So there's also people who are in, you know, this space today who have joined us who are in the events industry or the entertainment space. And gosh, you know, you've been forced to shut down through no fault of your own. You've just had to comply. And that's a long climb back. So one of the things that I'm asking everyone in selling to do is to read the room. Read the room when it comes to how best to engage with our customers from now on. So when I say that, I really want you to think about it, because salespeople need to engage in conversations with their customers, not by simply turning up unannounced. I mean, that's an example of how not to read the room. We actually need deeper skills, a deeper skill set to ensure that our approach isn't just about product or price. So that's the trap that it's easy for salespeople to fall into, is knowing everything about your product and then talking about your product. It's what the product can do, and then based on that, what that business is able to do as a result of the product doing what it's going to be doing. So we always need to be understanding where our customers are coming from. So we need to be able to speak in a way that's relevant and valuable now. So things are very, very different. Lockdown's been a catalyst for change for salespeople. And, you know, some could argue that maybe this is the shake-up we actually needed, because what we got away with pre-pandemic simply won't wash. It won't work anymore. So we need to adjust, but how? So the level to which we can adjust depends on the depth of our skill set, which is something we're continuously improving, or at least I hope we are. So we need to be deliberate and purposeful about customer engagement because it matters. And the way that we are going to be operating in this new landscape is in line with this model here, which is a continuous improvement model. So sometimes people don't think about salespeople as being planned, but some of the best salespeople I've ever come across have an exceptional ability to plan. And I'm not just talking about their territory planning, I'm not just talking about their account planning, but even down to a conversation. I'm not talking about scripts. I'm not talking about scripts at all, but I am talking about having deliberate, outcome-driven conversations that progresses an opportunity. Because what we actually need to do is to have a way of measuring our effectiveness and our results to keep us focused on those opportunities that are actually going to convert this quarter, progressing all of the other ones that we think we can move along in order to progress those and convert them. And we need to do things more commercially. So we need to understand how to sell to get greater share of wallet, to maintain margins and preserve margins, which cannot happen if we're eroding through pricing and discounting. Anyone can do that. That's lazy selling. And what happens once you've cut the price, next person comes in, what are they going to do? Undercut. So where does that leave everyone? We need to be better than that. And we also need to make sure that we're not just going out seeing customers or speaking with customers who are the squeaky wheels, the problem children, or the ones that just make us feel good. That's all too easy. So we've got our planning aspect, and then based on our plans, we execute those plans with action. So this means that we're taking deliberate action. It's thoughtful, it's skillful, and it builds deep trust. That's what we need to be doing right now, because that's missing. Without accountability, however, you know, even the most disciplined salespeople will go backwards because it's human nature. And once we've got accountability there and we've got a greater insight, we need that person or that structure to be external to us. As much as we'd like to keep ourselves accountable, it's like getting up. We say, okay, I'm going to start a new running regime. I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock comes around. We think, oh, it's raining. Maybe I'll just put the alarm on snooze and I'll get up at 6:30. And we don't, because we don't keep ourselves accountable. But if we've got an accountability partner that we're going out to meet somewhere, we're more likely to get up and get out because they're relying on us. So it's a similar kind of structure that salespeople need when it comes to selling as well, because from there we get new feedback and suggestions, and then we can recalibrate, feed that back into our planning and continually cycle upwards. So this is a slide that I think is one that I really want you to remember. The world has changed. So I need to set the scene for this because we understand, obviously, that this is all around COVID and the impact of lockdown. So pre-pandemic, we had 5% unemployment, solid GDP, strong business and consumer confidence. Then April data came out, and at that stage it said, well, unemployment's already at 10%, and that wasn't including JobKeeper figures. So they're actually predicting the unemployment rate to go up to about 15%. So the latest data, however, that came out more recently from the International Monetary Fund said that Australia is going to be one of those few economies that is going to have a short but sharp recession. So that's actually good news. It's better news than we were thinking that we might have. So they're predicting a 6.7 contraction this year, and then next year in 2021, a 6.1 expansion. So it's still an overall contraction, but it's probably going to be in 2 years' time that we'll probably see pre-COVID levels of GDP. Saul Westlake, who's an independent economist, has also sort of jumped into this and said, well, let's pump the brakes here, not so fast. Just because lockdown restrictions are starting to ease doesn't mean that businesses are just going to open up everywhere. And the people who support the event industry and the hospitality industry will know this all too well, because it depends on whether it's profitable to do so. So we saw in states like Queensland and New South Wales that started to open up cafes, restaurants, pubs. It just wasn't viable for them because they looked around and went, well, I can't just have 10 people at a time in my cafe. I'm not going to turn $1 because I'm still going to have to hire a chef. So there's lots of those businesses that will be looking at the current situation and determining whether or not they reopen. So even though the news is possibly better than we could be expecting, we still need to kind of wait and see a little bit. So if we can kind of look at COVID as a wake-up call and as a catalyst for change, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us. But what it does mean is that in the next 2 years, the businesses that are going to be in operation are going to have less staff. So essentially the pie's shrunk. They're going to be far more discerning about where they spend their available funds. It doesn't mean that they're not going to spend. It just means that we need to be better at earning the right to get those funds. And then we need to know how to do that. So what this all means for selling is that what worked pre-pandemic, and I use the word worked loosely because I think it's really more what we got away with, because you can get away with really bad selling behaviour when times are good, because people will still need stuff. And so you just happen to be Johnny on the spot. You're okay. I kind of like you. Let's go. I'll tell you what I need. You don't have to sell me anything. But that's not going to work going forward. So the reality is that there's no more numbers games. There just won't be the numbers to play. So you hear people say, oh, selling's a numbers game. And it is, absolutely. If you don't have enough activity, you're not going to reach your target. But there needs to be a deeper skill set that accompanies that activity level. There's no more transactional selling. What I mean by that is a sale today at the expense of ongoing revenue or a bigger opportunity going forward. Not understanding the longer term or the bigger picture. We really need to make that shift towards commercial consulting. And like I talked before about, increasing, our market share, improving our margins, maximising our returns as a business, and understanding what all of the things that we need to do as salespeople to support that business objective, because we can't afford to be eroding margin. It's a really fast way to go broke. So we might get really good top line sales, but if there's no margin there, there's no profit and we're in really big trouble. So salespeople bear a lot of that responsibility. And like I was saying before about, the erosion of price and discounting. I mean, look, that's lazy. We can't do that anymore. We can't be warm bodies. I'm not saying there's anyone on this session who would fall into this category, but you might know someone who does. And that's the likeable Joe or Joanne that turns up on a Friday with, a case full of beer for everyone. People like them, but they don't necessarily have a lot of follow-up, follow-through, attention to detail. They're just a good guy or girl. Everyone likes them. They're everyone's friend. They're, slapping people on the back and shaking hands. Well, not anymore, shaking elbows, maybe touching elbows. But really what that behaviour is all about, or what it suggests without really intentionally doing so, is because I'm doing all of this, because I'm a really nice guy or girl, you owe me. And that's a really awkward position to have your customer be put in. And so I would say to you that you want people to buy from you, not just because they like you. It's important to have great relationships. I'm certainly not suggesting in any way, shape or form that we don't need good relationships, because we do. We also just need to have better commercial relationships. We want our customers to respect us. We want them to trust us as salespeople, and we want them to come to us about problems outside of just what it is that we can provide them as a supplier. And that's when we know that we've made the shift from being a rep towards the behaviours that a consultant displays. So remember that, you know, all of those old horrible myths about salespeople, you know, gift of the gab, you know, talk underwater, sell ice to the Eskimos. Well, telling isn't selling. Some of the best salespeople I know are really good at asking deep questions, not many questions, because they know that the customer needs to do most of the talking. They might direct that conversation with really good questions and be quite clear about how they're progressing that conversation, but they're exceptional listeners. And they're methodical about the way that they go about what they do. So what we actually need in this new economy are people who are going to identify and convert targets to opportunities, maximise the size and scope of those opportunities with consistent, effective behaviour that's strategic, it's planned, and it progresses opportunity. And if we're doing that, we can convert more opportunities into customers. And then we also need people who can retain and grow. So as companies look at their cost of sale, they can no longer afford to have hunters and farmers. They need people who can do everything and do everything well and use tools and systems to support them. So really needs to be a shift. But that's not just for salespeople to do. So we as sales leaders or as owners of businesses, if we need sales to kind of start to climb us out of this over the next 2 years, we need to be investing in their development so that their capability grows and therefore our results are going to grow. So let's move on to the next polling question here. So considering these behaviours that I've got in front of you, I want you to think about where you or your team really sits on the rep to consultant continuum. So I've got 4 different responses there, more on the rep side, somewhere in the middle, more on the consultant side, or I don't know, actually, and I need to find out. Let's see what we can get here. Wow, that's good. So we're kind of in the middle, somewhere in the middle, more on the consultant side. It's important for us as owners and sales leaders to really know that. And the only way we can know that is not by the results that we're getting. That's lazy. If we're only managing our teams by dashboards, we're in a great deal of trouble, guys. We need to go out and watch our people in play. It'd be like a football coach who just went along to training sessions and never actually saw a match. They probably wouldn't have a job for very long. So the best way for us to really get a sense of where our team's at on that continuum is to be going out with them, not to put them under any pressure, but just to make sure that we can coach in the moment, because as sales leaders, we need to be leading, coaching, and managing as well. So when we look at I've got one more poll question here too. So as salespeople, how often has this been the bulk of your first 4 weeks as a salesperson? Oh, sorry, I've gone to, oh yeah, that's right, yeah. So when you're onboarding, have you ever just been given a car, a target, a territory, a phone, and some marketing material and said, okay, off you go, go. So take yourselves right back to when you were a salesperson in your first 4 weeks and tell me honestly how often that's happened to you. Has it happened rarely? Has it happened sometimes? Has it happened mostly? Or has it happened kind of every time? Because it's unfair, in my opinion. But that's what a lot of organisations really think that onboarding is. You're right. Here we go. Now we're getting into the reality of it. Sometimes, mostly. Unfortunately, I would like to say that it happens mostly. So what my experience has been of most of the organisations that I've started to work with is they get someone on board, that person does their best sell in the interview, they get them on board and they say, okay, so here's your phone, here's your car, here's your petrol card, here's your, your e-tag or whatever the toll thing is in your state. This is your territory. Here's a bit of marketing material. I'll see you at the end of the quarter. Oh, we'll also catch up at our team meetings as well. And here's your target. Good luck. And salespeople are like, right, okay. So now a better company might say, we'll go out with one of our best guys and just watch what they do. Well, everyone does something different and no one's a robot. So what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another person, but that doesn't mean that there can't be consistency across a team. So there's a lot of different ways in which we can work as companies to really support our people and making sure that, we're really starting to work with our sales teams in a different way. So when we talk about what sales leaders can do right now to influence their impact and the way that their salespeople show up to their customers, this is absolutely critical. So we talk about there's 4 different stages. So there's recruit, then there's getting them customer ready, there's the lead, coach and manage piece, and then there's about building sales capacity. So when we think about, the action or the focus at each of those stages, how I said, there's no such thing as a salesperson that's a silver bullet, that's going to come with all of the answers and save and rescue everyone, almost like a white knight. And yet that's what we try to recruit for. And then when they do their best sell in that interview, and then, we're scratching our heads going, where did that person go? Because I don't see them acting like they did in the interview now. And we're 2 months in and I'm trying to work out whether I can should I keep them? Should I let their probation? There's all of those questions, and we need to have behavioural indicators as well as the final results. Otherwise, we're not going to have a clue about whether or not they're going to get the results. So here are some of the things that I would suggest strongly that sales leaders and business owners actually need to start to look for when they're interviewing potential candidates. And the good news for sales leaders is you don't have to have been the best salesperson to be a great sales leader. But what you do need is support. So if we're asking our salespeople to go on a journey from rep to consultant, it kind of follows, doesn't it, that we also need to grow our capacity as well as sales leaders. So the first part is values. It's a fundamental. And when we talk about so much change going on that's imposed on us and we've got to comply and we've got to kind of make the most of what we've got here, values should be the same no matter what. And that culture, so values and culture should remain the constant. That should be the thing that all of our team members can kind of hang their hats on and know is going to remain consistent. The strategy, however, and the focus, well, that will need to be contextually driven, and we're going to have to be far more agile as businesses to adjust to where our customers are at. And that might require, some restructure. That might require a different approach to the way in which we engage with our customer base. So values, are they aligned with the companies? And there are lots of different ways that you can test for values. Track record, like I said earlier, not just, with the employer doing a reference check. I'm talking about finding out a little bit more about how people really think about that person. And that's stuff that you're not going to find on LinkedIn necessarily. That requires conversations. And when you think about this industry, it's emerged from, there's a lot of family businesses here. There's a lot of those values that have been perpetuated through. So even though it's a big industry, it's a small industry. In fact, I would argue that all of Australia is quite small and reputation is everything. So we need to find out how our salespeople are regarded, because they're going to be the front line of our brand. They're going to be the front line of how that relationship with our customers happens from that point onwards. And if we're not confident, we're in a little bit of trouble. Are they coachable? So, you know, are they coming saying, you know, yeah, I know how to do that. I don't need to be told that. And, you know, yeah, no, I've got that. I've done that before. Yep. Oh no. And that doesn't work. I've tried that. We need people who are open, who are committed to their continuous journey of improvement. And that gives us somewhere to go then, because if they're committed to increasing their own capacity, then the sky's the limit in terms of what kind of results that they're able to achieve, because they're going to be looking at doing things differently. They're agile within themselves. Also willing to do what it takes. Now, what I mean here is not people who are prepared to do shady deals in order to get a sales result. I'm talking about people who are not limited by their job descriptions. So unfortunately, I've heard of people saying things like, well, that's not my job, that's so-and-so. Well, if I'd known that they wanted me to do that, they should have written it down, or it should be in my KPIs. There's no room for that anymore. We need to have people who are committed to the organisations that they work for, committed to the customers that they have the privilege of serving, and then doing what they need to do in order to serve. Then we need to get our sales team customer ready. So I talk about onboarding, but there needs to be more than just, you know, passing out the phone, passing out the car, passing out the territory. Here's a bunch of brochures, off you go, target. It needs to be quite thorough. It needs to be thorough around how we embody our values. This is what it looks like. This is what it doesn't look like. This is an infringement of our values. This is a good example of delivering on our values. This is why it matters to us. This is why it matters to our customers. This is our approach. Have we even thought about how we engage with our customers, or do we just leave it up to the salespeople and then can them when they don't do what they should know intuitively that we want them to do? There needs to be a customer engagement strategy in place. No robots, but there does need to be consistency, because it's the embodiment of your brand. And when people know, oh, I've had a Coates experience, or I've had a Kennard's experience, or I've had an Access experience, they know what that means, because that's their consistent experience. It might be with this person or that person, but the experience is consistent. Behaviours. So what behaviours, when applied consistently and effectively, will drive the right results? And that's what we manage and coach too. So in order to do that, we need to identify what good looks like, teach people how to deliver what good looks like, and then coach them accordingly. And that's where that coaching in the moment really comes into play. Training, we don't want our customers to be our sandbox. And we also need to support salespeople with the right tools and processes. Now, I'm not talking about CRMs only. I'm talking about really simple tools that they can use to keep themselves focused and focused on the right things. So sometimes we talk about CRMs as staged measures of how people are progressing. You know, so how many opportunities do you have in stage 4 or at 75% or whatever that measure is in Salesforce, for example? And that's usually at proposal stage. Now, if that's what we measure success on, guess what's going to happen? We're going to get a lot of salespeople proposing a lot of business that actually isn't an opportunity, that has no real need or urgency, budget, time frame, decision makers attached to it necessarily. They're just wishes, but because that's what's getting managed, that's what will get done. And so then when most of those don't convert, leaders go, oh, I think we've got a problem with people being able to close business. You know, we've got a lot of opportunity in there, but they just can't close. It's actually earlier in that engagement process. We need people who can scope out need, who can create need, and who can grow the size of that opportunity and then progress it to conversion. That's what that's indicating to me. So then we've got recruitment, we've got onboarding. And sometimes when we're going through this, you might be thinking, if you're a sales leader or a business owner, you might be thinking, maybe I need to be onboarding my current people and taking them through that again. What better time than now? Seriously, what better way to bring your team together as a cohesive unit where they They reimagine what might be possible for the business. They fall in love with your brand again. Leading, coaching and managing. So leading is a leader is somebody who's not just restrained by their title, or, you know, people have to do what you say just because you're their boss. A leader is someone that others choose to follow, and it's not role contingent. So an example of that would be modeling the behaviour that you actually want to see in your salespeople. So going there first. Coaching, in-field observation and feedback, like I said, seeing them in play. You have to do that. And keeping them accountable. So obviously removing roadblocks and smoothing way to market, having all of those monitoring tools in place, absolutely. But there needs to be a balance across all of those. And then building sales capacity. So sometimes that will be about increasing the size of your team, particularly if your existing team's just going gangbusters. You might need to support them. So if you've got them broken into, say, Metro, you might have Metros growing so fast, you might need to have Metro 1, Metro 2, for example. But you also need to build your existing team's capacity through better training and coaching as well. So then we say, okay, well, what can salespeople do right now? Because now is the point of power. So there's a few things that we can do. When we talk about targeting or prospecting, this is really what we need to build our skills in salespeople. So we need to start thinking about ourselves as curious people, as almost like we're going to go out and find things out, almost like inspectors of our customers and our markets and our competitors and of ourselves as well. So we talk about building insight across our customers. So what do I need to know about our customers in order to create better value and relevance for them as well as for our organisation? What do I need to know about our competitors? What do they do better than us? And how am I going to have that conversation? What do we do better than them? And how am I going to bring up that conversation? What do I need to know about our market? And how do I bring that into a conversation so that I can create some relevance with my customer base and they understand that I really get their view of the world. I get their issues and I get their problems, and then I'm able to put our solution into that rather than just, here's a new crane, here's a new truck, here's a new whatever that might be. And also internal insights. So we also need to understand the value chain internally so that we can make sure that we're not over-promising and under-delivering. Salespeople historically have had a bit of a bad rap, maybe deservedly so, about, you know, doing anything that the customer will want, taking that back, and then somebody who has to basically deliver that solution goes, well, thanks very much, but you're going to have to tell them I can't get that to them until next week. But I said tomorrow. Well, you shouldn't have said tomorrow because we've never been able to deliver it tomorrow and it should be next week. So we need to understand our own businesses so that we're creating and setting expectations that are going to build trust rather than internal fighting or resentment with our customers. It's not the place that we need to be. So we need to be better planners. You know, who will I schedule meetings with this quarter? How can I build relevance with those customers? Where do I need to start with each prospect? You know, what's my plan for that first conversation? Is it just to get to know each other? I mean, we can't do everything. If they've just met us, should we be doing the all singing, all dancing version? You know, even if they're telling us that they need to order something, let's do some more investigation. Let's find out why. What's caused that? What they used to do around that solution? Why us? Why now? Let's just start asking some better questions. And then, am I ready? By the end of the quarter, what do I want to achieve and feel? What action do I need to take? And who do I need to be in order to do that? So we start with the end in mind. We put together our own action plans, and then we think about the behaviours that we need to be exhibiting in order to achieve those things. So with nurturing opportunity, is this that in between piece. So this is where we grow the scope of an opportunity. So quite often as salespeople, we can smell a sale a mile away and we start to get really like a greyhound after a rabbit. And we'll want to just, quick, they've told us what they want, quick, write up the order. Well, actually, we need to just hold the phone a little bit, and we need to make sure that we're getting everything, that we're not leaving opportunity on the table. The customer doesn't necessarily know everything that they want. They might have some urgency, but we need to make sure that everything that we're providing them is fit for purpose and is going to enable them to do what they really need to do in a better way. So we need to build insight across need, decision makers, decision-making process, competitors, budget, time frame, value. You know, this crazy notion that there's one value proposition for everyone. You know, that existed in, I think, 1983 when someone, I think Kotler wrote a marketing book and said that's, you know, that's what a value proposition is. Well, I'm challenging that, and I'm saying that a value proposition, while there might be some consistent factors there for your business to customers, needs to be relevant to each customer. It's about what matters to them and then how we fit into that. That's the value. So we also need to incrementally build opportunity. We need to play the long game. I think the future of where we're headed now is about, this is going to sort the wheat from the chaff. People that can create and deliver long-term partnerships with their clients and suppliers are the ones that are going to survive, and survive very, very well. So we need to uncover what matters beyond the outcome and trust that we're able to do that, and building trust with our customers as well. We obviously need to win, but if we've done the first two pieces, let me tell you, your conversion rates will be, well, they should be at about 80%. Yep, I did say 80%. And that's because you do your selling back here. A proposal is not a sales tool, so stop doing it. It is a document that summarises what you've said in a conversation. That's all it is. We always present them in person. There shouldn't be any surprises. And we need to also be able to table any particular roadblocks as well, and just talk about how we're going to overcome that to build that ownership within the customer, so that we can make sure that we're winning everything, or as much as possible, with what we're proposing. And then the final part is we need to be able to continually go back and say, well, you know how we said that we were going to deliver this value? Have we? How are you measuring that? How well are we going so far? What else could we be doing? That's a conversation that a lot of salespeople are terrified to have, because they're scared of what the answer might be. But you know what? The answer's still there whether we ask it or not. And so if we are going to have the courage to ask that question, and we get that answer, even if it's not what we would love to hear, like, oh, you're fabulous, you couldn't be doing anything better. Even if it's not that, it's an opportunity for us to build better trust and better credibility. People love people that fix problems. We also need to be uncovering other opportunities. So there might be other divisions that we haven't even covered or attended to yet. And if we know what the future plans of the business are, we can be well positioned to be there when they're ready to talk to us about that. And we need to be delivering that value delivered conversation, I would say every 6 months. So really, in summary, we need to be able to, this is everyone here, read the room, adjust, and then read the room again. This, like I said before, COVID isn't going anywhere. It's not going anywhere fast. And so we need to have a better skill set. So a couple of things, one I didn't mention before that I think is important. So when we're talking about reading the room, you know, that drop-in visit, stop doing that. Pick up the phone, work out when is a good time to have a conversation. Is it better to have it in person, or would they prefer to do that in this kind of environment? We've got the technology, we've been forced kicking and screaming into this world. But I tell you what, this technology here, The phone app, unfortunately, is the 6th most used app on our phones. Isn't that crazy? And, you know, unfortunately, what I would say to you is most of us aren't used to having prospecting calls on the phone. We're not used to selling over the phone, and it's a lost skill for a lot of people. But we've always got to be reading the room and adjusting accordingly. So if we feel that the phone's going to be the best tool for us to use, let's use it. But don't start turning up, because just the perception, it's bad business etiquette these days, just the perception that you're not even thinking. You're thinking about yourself, you're not thinking about the site, or you're not thinking about the customer and what's important to them. They can't afford any more days of just one person getting something. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily from you, but again, it's just about reading the room. The other thing that we need to read the room about is people don't want to be sold to. So that's when people turn up and this is our latest catalogue. Have you seen that? We've got a special on, blah, blah. Those days have gone. Turn up, genuinely care about that customer. What does the next 6 months look like for them? What challenges are they going to face? What does their workforce look like? What challenges does that present to them? What about their customers? So we really need to extend our skill set as salespeople, and as sales leaders and business owners, help them, give them what they need. If we're asking them to be better, we need to help them to be better. Because that mythical unicorn of a salesperson isn't out there. They don't exist. So recruit them for their values, their coachability, their reputation, and so on, and then build the skills around them. So we've got that shift from being transactional, price-focused, order taker, personality over rigor, to consultative selling. No robots, no playing numbers, just better skills and behaviours, better customer conversations. So I'm actually talking about better relationships, but I'm talking about commercial relationships, not she'll be right. How'd you go on the weekend? I'm not talking about that kind of relationship. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying that's not always going to be appropriate. We need to have flexible communication skills and not just use one. If we're a hammer, everything's a nail. So we need to have better skills and a broader range of skills so that we can do more with more people with less effort. Longer lasting sales outcomes. That's what this game's all about. My whole purpose is to make selling easy for salespeople, fun even, because when we enjoy what we do, it is easy. Those relationships come, people start coming to us, our phones start ringing. We don't have to make as many outbound calls, but it takes momentum to build, and that can be done if we're focused on the right things at the right time, in the right way. Sales leaders, we've got to lead, coach and manage our teams, and we've got to do that across every stage of their development. So it's not a set and forget proposition where we just come back and say, why didn't you get that result? Or, yeah, good, you got that result. I don't want to know how you got it. Just keep doing it. That's, you know, and then we wonder why when we kind of dig a little bit deeper, and maybe that wasn't that ethical, or maybe I'm not comfortable with that conversation that they had. We'd know that if we were there all along the way. And salespeople, we've got to be able to find opportunity now because it's there. But again, if we don't really know we might know how to find it, but we've got to know how to maximize it, win it, keep it, retain it, and then grow it. So we've got to be more commercial about our entire approach. So I have an exclusive access code for the people attending this session. So I can't give that to you unless you email me there. But this is just a peek at some skills that will help you now in this COVID hybrid, working from home, working from the office, working on the road kind of a world, where we start to explore some of the skills that are required and what that practically means and looks like for you. So that's absolutely on offer for anyone attending this workshop. And if I transition to the next slide and you go, oh, I didn't get her email, I'm sure Sally would be more than happy to provide that to you. So I would really like to, because I tried to make sure that we had time now for questions, and you might have a burning question, you might not have a burning question, but I have a feeling here we've got a couple of questions here now. Are these people happy for me to read them out?
Yeah, we've had a few questions come through, Ingrid, and firstly, thank you for a great presentation.
Oh, thank you. It's
yeah,
okay.
it's as I said before, this is all recorded, so all of our members have access to this again. But regardless, I've got 2 pages of scribbled notes of just jotting things down. I think it's fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicholas. Really appreciate that.
Yeah. So we do have a few questions that have come through. So let me bring them up and I'll feed them through to you.
Great.
Okay, so first question. Okay, so this sort of goes right back to that concept of when you're looking for salespeople, making sure they're coachable. So the question we have here is, if my team appear not to be coachable, what can I do to change their mindset? Are there any sort of tools or techniques I can use to change their mindset to become more coachable?
Well, I think it comes down to awareness. And so people are really reluctant to change if they don't think that they need to. And so, this is really hard. It's the hardest. When somebody's not achieving their results, that's an easy conversation to have. Oh, we need to do some work here. You're not achieving the results. And, it's easy for them to say, well, actually, yeah, you're right. I do. But what if they are? We just don't like the way that they're achieving those results, maybe, or it's going to compromise us down the track, or we think that actually the way that they're engaging isn't in line with our company values, or we're getting a few strange pieces of feedback from our customer base or our supplier base. That's when it becomes a tricky conversation. So I think the first thing that we need to make sure of is that we're all clear, we're all on the same page. So we cannot expect people to know what we're thinking by using their psychic powers. We need to have them clearly listed. So I talked about having, sales behaviours that for our business, and every business will be slightly different, what good looks like for us. This is how we want to engage with our clients. And these are the behaviours that I really need to see you displaying that will tell me and you what good looks like. And then I look at the behaviours around that. And this is where we need to have our skills and our hats on as sales coaches, as well as leaders and managers. So if we have an understanding of the behaviours that we need to see at each of the stages of engagement with customers, and we're having those conversations with our team members, they will start to be able to identify, oh, you know what? I didn't do that, did I? Oops. Or we might say, now, how do you think you went with that? So we're looking at the behaviour out here. So it's almost like we're side by side, coach, salesperson, and the behaviours out in front of us. So we're both looking at it like that. So it's more objective, and we're problem solving together. So I could say, so, how do you think you went with that behaviour? Oh, I think I did pretty well. Okay. The next question a sales coach needs to ask is, so can you give me a specific example of how you applied that behaviour in that customer conversation? Now, if somebody goes, yeah, well, actually, I don't think I did, then we've got somewhere to go. But if they say, well, actually, this is what I did, then I did this, and then you'll notice that they said that, and then I don't know if you saw this, but they responded to me in this way, then we can actually go, do you know what? You're right. And I might have missed that as a sales coach. So yeah, that's really good. That's excellent. So it comes down to being clear, first of all, about the behaviours that will give us what good looks like and that will lead to our results. Number one, everyone's clear. Number two is actually observing those behaviours being delivered consistently and effectively in the market, and then having that conversation with our salespeople so that they get used to us observing them and they actually start to welcome it because they know that it's only going to drive their own performance to be better and better.
Yeah, and it's a great sort of a concept. I liked how you sort of talked about the idea that they might be a performing salesperson. So under the old measure of this is your quarterly KPI, they might be hitting that KPI, but they might be leaving X amount of dollars on the table in terms of share of wallet. And by engaging in that coaching process, that continuous improvement process, you open their eyes to, well, yes, you're getting these sales closed, but this is how much you're leaving on the table. Yeah. And by engaging with the behaviors that we've defined, you have the opportunity, let's say 80%, an 80% rate of being able to get this extra amount of revenue, and in the meantime, providing great solutions to our customers.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love what you've just said, Nicholas, because I think that that's absolutely true. They could be leaving a ton of opportunity on the table. And sometimes salespeople get into a real comfort zone with existing customers. And so they're less likely to go out there and continue to feed that sales pipeline or that sales funnel. And they just keep on mining what they've got there. Now, that can only go on for so long. So they might have maxed out share of wallet with a customer. And that doesn't mean that they forget them or anything like that. But unless we're continually monitoring our market and our customer base and categorizing them in terms of the growth potential or what else is there to get. So somebody might be a D category customer today, but they might have the potential to be a B if we treat them in a certain way and if we go looking for certain criteria. So that's, again, one of those planning questions too. So yeah, they might be hitting their targets, but like you said, how much more could they be getting if they only did this, this and this? And it's usually, I haven't found that it's usually a lack of wanting to be better. It's just that they don't necessarily know how, and moreover, their leaders don't know how to have that conversation with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've definitely seen sales-based activity, which is they have an existing customer portfolio and it's on a contract basis, and all they do is recontract time 1 month beforehand.
Yes.
Quick for last proposal. Here you go. Bing, bang, bang. That's it. But they're not really, they're not actively looking at, what their business looks like, what new opportunities there, how you can be, provide greater solutions for their business to help them do better business. And it's, it's a challenge sometimes.
Spot on.
Yeah. Okay, a few more questions are coming through.
Yep.
Okay, this one is, so other than generalized activity KPIs, do you have any suggestions on other ways to measure sales success? And I know you've sort of touched on consistency with behaviors, for example, but
Yeah, absolutely. So there's always going to be KPIs, and sales, look, it's a blessing and a curse. It's one of the most direct ways of measuring performance that exists. So I love being in the space that I'm in, for example, because when people work with me, they can kind of, there's a reasonably straight line between the work that we do and the outcome, because it's sales. Whereas if it's marketing or HR or leadership, it's a little bit fuzzy. It's a lot more difficult to kind of generate an ROI. So as a salesperson, we live and die by the fact that we are metrics driven and KPI driven. So we've got the behaviors as well, because that's a measure. But then we need to go back and ask our customers, because that's the point of truth. And we also need to be understanding too about the supply chain, so the value chain, but also our suppliers as well. So I would be asking for stakeholder engagement survey, and also not necessarily a net promoter score, but something of that kind of equivalent, so that, again, it's not just the outcome that we get or the result that we get, but that the way that we're actually achieving that is conducted in a way that builds trust, respect, ongoing desire to work together. They're generating referrals for us. They're not going to go anywhere if, the person down the road who's our competitor comes in with a, I've got a special today, sign up here. Well, they're not going anywhere because they understand the value that we bring.
And do you think that sort of speaks to defining that customer journey as well, and putting in milestones around engaging in looking at customer health? So doing the health checks and saying, hey, you're a valued customer. We're checking in with you to see how we're performing with what we're already doing. What are the areas for improvement? And hey, what's your business doing in the future? What are you excited by?
Oh my God, Nicholas, you talk my language.
I might have had a sales-based business in the past, but
yeah. And I suspect you might have too, because you really know what you're talking about. So that that you talk about the customer journey, and that's going to differ depending on who that customer is and who we are.
Yeah.
So we need to understand that, and we need to make sure that, there are those benchmarks all along the road. I love how you just said that. It's another way of saying, we use that as our reference point for what good looks like.
Yeah. And it's showing that you value your customers.
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. Okay, a few more questions coming through, and I'm sort of mindful of our time frames as well. So we'll get through these as well.
Okay.
Okay, this is a good one. Now that lockdown restrictions are easing, what tips can you offer? And I guess there's probably an underlying sense of urgency in terms of business being shut down for a period of time. And perhaps where would we start? What activity would we start doing?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think that it's one where. So I did a webinar the other day, and there was a woman from the UK who's in events. And she was saying, well, hello, we can't, we can't even go anywhere. What can we do? And I'm actually having a conversation with her at 5 o'clock our time, because it's 7 o'clock in the morning there. But she's in all sorts of panic around that. And then there was another woman from Fiji Airways who, again, you can imagine. So we are fortunate because we can start to engage with our customers on a one-on-one basis now. So the way to do that, though, is I would be suggesting that we know who we want to talk with, and I would suggest that we pick up the phone and we actually have a conversation that starts with not, can I sell you something, or, oh, hi, we're back in business. What do you need?
Yeah.
What we need to be doing is, hi, how have you found this time? What are you up to? What's happening with the business? Just almost like a care call, just to make sure that we're demonstrating that part of us that gets a sense of where they're at. Then maybe a couple of weeks after that, then we have the next call, which might be, how's it all going now that we're blah, blah, blah. What do the next 6 months look like for you? What are some of the things that you need to achieve? What's driving that? So we understand a little bit more about their world in the next sort of 6 months. And then saying, so what are some of the challenges that are going to come up for you that you think we might be able to help you work through or help you on that climb back? What are some of the things that we need to make sure that we don't do just as much as we do in order to make it easy to continue to work with us? Who else do we need to engage with in this conversation to make sure that, we understand the whole landscape of what you're dealing with? What are some of the things that your customers are facing? How's that impacting on you? How's that changed since before? So that we can make sure that it's not just the product that we can supply, but it's about the time frames. So it might be that speed of delivery, or turnaround from order to on site, or it might be something goes wrong. Do we have a policy in place? We need to find those things out that are really going to be business critical for them to do more with what they've got now. And so that, they see us as part of that solution provision.
Yeah, coming alongside rather than coming with a product catalogue in hand.
Oh, big time, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so listen, I think we've sort of run out of time, but what I would say to our people that have attended the webinar is that if you have more questions, please send them through. Also, it's recorded and you have the contact details for Ingrid as well. I'd really encourage you to reach out to Ingrid, and there's a lot of great information there. I've probably got about 7 other questions myself. In any case, we'll wrap this up. Thank you once again, Ingrid, for a fantastic webinar, and we look forward
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. And we look forward to engaging with you and our members in the future as well. So a little bit of just tidying off from our side as well before we say goodbye to the HIRE20 Virtual Conference. When this seminar ends, there will be a survey. We encourage all of our participants to complete the survey. It's super quick. This gives us direction to make sure we're doing the right things by you. We're headed, you capture how useful you found the seminars and what you'd like to be presented on in the future, please give us that feedback so we can work for you. In terms of HIRE20, the virtual conference, this brings us to a close. So thank you for everyone that has attended not only this webinar, but every other webinar previously as well. And I'd reiterate this is that, you know, from the association's perspective, as soon as the COVID crisis sort of bloomed or exploded, whatever you want to call it, our number one focus from the board of directors all the way down is around what can we be doing as an association to support our members during this time, and also what can we be doing to give you the tools to flourish coming out of this time frame. That remains, so please do get back in contact with the National Office if there's anything you feel that we could be doing. We want to know how we can assist you. Finally, it is a crazy world out there, and there's, you know, a lot of craziness still to come, no doubt. Please stay safe. Please continue to do great business, and on behalf of the HRIA, thank you once again, and we hope to see you soon. Bye.
Thanks.